Hello and welcome to the Dynamics NAV 2013 reporting story. So, first of all, how many of you guys have made RDLC reports in 2009? Oh, that's good. Nice to see that. So, first of all, my name is Torben Wind Meyhoff. I'm a software developer in the reporting team and the server team as well also. And this is Gaurav Roy. He's a software developer in the application team, and we split the presentation. So I'm talking mostly about platform stuff, and he's mostly talking about the application parts. Oh, wrong direction. So 2009, that was a new epoch where we had to introduce a new reporting story, but at the same time introducing new objects for making RDLC reports and making seaside reports. That was a task that we couldn't overcome it, and no partner or customer could overcome making new reports for everything. So the decision at that time was made that the dataset must be built from the dataset that we had on the seaside reports. But going into the new version where we had to get rid of the two-tiered model, we had to turn off the hybrids. We needed to have a clear data set. So in 2013, it's said many times before, there is no classic fallback. So that means that all report has to be RDLC reports. And it's mainly to lower the complexity of reporting and more clarity on where data comes from and how to maintain the data inside it. So, what you see up here is what is contained inside a reporting object. And to the left we have the 2009, where we, as you all know, we have the data item triggers, and we have sections with controls and triggers, request form, and the two newcomers, which was the one that the RDLC reports in 2009 was built on. So, in 2013, we took the three in the top out and made a data set instead. Dataset Designer is very similar to the Query Designer. They're not the same runtime because reports still have a lot of triggers, which queries does not have. So it was not like a one-to-one transition into query we could do here. But if you're coming from 2009 and you have section triggers by now, which does some of the functionality on your dataset, you first of all have to get rid of those, because section triggers is not used inside RDLC reports. And they wasn't that for neither 2009, and they're not for 2013. So what you see here is, this was the data designer model for 2009, where section was the fundament for the layout in the RDLC. So the problem was that many of the names in these reports were auto-generated, because making nice names for several thousands of reports was at that time also a pretty big challenge also. And it made it sometimes really hard to figure out what was the right controls to put into the dataset. So the new Dataset Designer is now the fundament, where it's much more visible what data comes into the RDLC. So here we have a simple list report in the Dataset Designer. I don't know how many of you have actually installed the betas or CTPs. It's pretty many. Okay, but it's a whole different experience to do a dataset report now. I just want to show you one little demo here. First of all, if you updated all your reports and you still have some of the ugly names inside it, so you have some names inside this report. I just took the report 101 because that's a pretty simple one. And you figured out that I didn't want this guy to be named name_customer. So you want to rename it. So normally if you renamed a dataset field, which they were called inside the old stack, you had to go into your layout afterwards and fix it. So what you can do now is that you can rename it from in here. I'll call it name2. And notice a little flag I'll get more into it later here. That's the include caption. That's the way to make labels for a field reference. And if we go into, you have to save this one first. And then we go into View and the layout. We're getting into Visual Studio. And we want to see here in that we actually got the field renamed, and the RDLC is also updated to point to the new field name, which makes sanitizing of existing C-side reports into RDLC reports much, much easier. So if you go up here and say View Report Data, I'll just drag it out so we get some more space. So you can see here, name underscore customer used to be called, is now called name2, and a label, which I'll get more into, is actually also renamed. And the same is the usages inside the RDLC. So this will be a great help, at least was a great help for us when we sanitized many of our reports. All right. 2013 also contains a new report viewer. We changed from report viewer 2008 to report viewer 2010. And with that one, it follows RDLC 2008, which has several advantages. It has, first of all, save as Word, which we also introduced in the AL language. So on a report object, you can now do save as Word and get doc files out of it. And I'll have a feature later I'll get into also where you actually can do it from the request page also. It was introduced in R2 actually, but not the Word part of it. With RDLC 2008, there's also new abilities, new classes to use inside it. We have the tablets control, which is a combination of table controls and matrix controls. It's a strong object. Sometimes it can also be hard to use, but it gives a flexibility that is much greater than we used to have in RDLC 2005. And we don't want to dwell much into RDLC's changes. You can see most of them well documented on the internet. But there's, for instance, gauge controls to do KPIs, and there's new features around charging, and Gaurav will do some demos later, and also where you can see more of Visual Studio. This means that we have to run on Visual Studio 2010 now for the editing experience. Another enhancement that was in RDLC 2008 is the ability to do mixed fonts and paragraphs inside a text box. Normally you can only have one value expression inside a text box, which means that if you had to tie data together, you had to do plus this, plus a space, plus this, which means that it will complicate the expression logic inside the reports. What you can do now is that you can put paragraphs into it, which means that you can actually have, inside a text box, you can make multi-injections. But with that also follows another great feature that you can actually use HTML inside these text boxes now. So I just want to show a feature first here, and then I'll go a bit deeper into what it can be used for. So we have a test with HTML. First of all, I made two global variables, the web client and web content. Web client is a .NET object, a standard web client from .NET 4.0, and web content is just a string. So I download a string from a local web server here, and I put it into web content, and the web content I put into a simple report that prints customers, and then I put the web content into the dataset as well here also. So if you look into the view layout of this report, here we have, first of all, a simple table. We take the number, the name, and the city of the customer, and print it in. And then we have an expression block, where you can see I take the first field in the dataset, the first value in the dataset with web content value, and put it inside here. So let's try to run the report. And what you see here is you saw the table first, spanning multi-pages, and then the HTML I got from a web server saying, hello, Mibuso. This means that you can actually go in, if you have some reports where you want a fixed header in the top of it, and a fixed footer, you can actually do injections and make some of your adjustments in the layout in HTML, and you can actually share them among multi-reports. And I think in you can use that in various scenarios. All right, parameters. Parameters is a new feature we also got when we got into RDLC 2008. And parameters means that you can feed the report viewer control with one value instead of sending it line by line. The label system in 2009 was made so we could support having language shifts line by line. That means that if you have a sales order where one page is for a German customer, you can have German captions. And if you're on the next page has a French sales order, you can do French captions. And to support that, we made, as you can see here in the About the report, we added line by line the caption values. But if you have a lot of rows sent over the wire, it of course takes up a lot of memory, and memory with many users is not a good thing. So what we added in 2013 was the ability to do parameters. And as I showed you before, the small checkers we have here to the right, this will include the caption of the associated caption from the field. So this one is attached, this column is attached to the customer number, a customer and the number in that table. And if you trigger this one, you'll get a field now called no_customer caption, which is then feeded in the parameters block. And if you are not interested in the fields ones, but just want ordinary ones, there's a label designer where you can make a key and a value, where the caption is the value is a caption ML, so you can do whatever languages you would like. The languages, the parameters is picked up right after on pre-report, so you have the ability to adjust the language before we get into the dataset building.
Yeah, so Torben explained how we can create parameters on C-side. Like, there are two ways. One using the include caption, where the parameter comes directly from the table, and the other one is using label designer. But so parameters in our case is mainly used to pass labels from NAV to RDLC as part of the dataset. And how would you use it inside RDLC? It's pretty simple. You can see there is a new folder called parameters, where all the parameters that you've created will be visible, and you will be able to access it using that expression saying parameter dot the name of the parameter dot value, and you can use it in the header or in group headers or any labels that you want to create. So using it is quite easy. So now I'm going to touch upon the place that you should not be using parameters for. So parameters cannot be used for dynamic labels. So what does dynamic labels mean? So in Navision, it's quite often we see that when we print customer-side reports, that you switch the language when you are actually executing the report. So you're printing two sales orders, and the first order is actually in German, and the second one is, let's say, in Danish. That means the language of the header is going to change when the report is actually executing. So since parameters is a static collection, it will not be able to change language on the fly. So you cannot use parameters if you're changing languages inside the report on the fly. Similarly, you cannot use it for any grouping or any conditional visibility because it's one static value. So what do you do if you still need labels which change per line? So what you need to do is, and this is what we have done when we automatically upgrade our reports also from 2009 to 2013, is create text constants and use that text constants inside your data source as a field. That is one way of doing it. The other way is use that expression saying data item dot field caption field name and put it as a column. And one very interesting thing which we have introduced in 2013 is this will now respect the caption class. That means if your data item is referring to a table, and now you are accessing the caption of the field inside the table, and that has a caption class property, that will now be respected. Okay, so that was an overview on parameters. Now we are going to speak about some other new features that we introduced with NAV 2013. So a great feature is server-side printing. Completely new in 2013. You can use it to print heavy reports because it has a 64-bit memory allocation. So how do we print reports on the server side? So this, one of the ways is, I don't know how many of you are aware of this new keyword called start session in 2013. But this is the way by which you can actually spin up background sessions using CAL code. So if you are actually spinning up background sessions using CAL code, using the start session and executing a report over that session, this report is actually going to print on the server. Similarly, you can use the new NAS, which is actually another background session, or you can also use it over job queue. So you can set a report to print over job queue, which will print it as a background session, and it will be printed on the server. And in all these cases, your printer selection is going to be respected. So a few things to remember when you're doing server-side printing. Your report is not printing on the client machine anymore, it's printing on the server. So if the server should be started as a domain account, so if you are going to send that report to a network printer from the server, so that the server has access to the network printer that it's going to send your report to. So how are you going to track these printings, whether they finish properly or not? One of the ways that you can track, it's more like a developer point of view, is you can use the table called session event, which tracks all the sessions we start. It has entry information and exit information and all kinds of errors. So if you have scheduled a report to be printed on the background session, you can go into the session event table to see if that session completed properly or the report threw an error. So another thing to remember is we actually suppress request pages, but if the report is trying to send to a printer and the printer is going to ask, because it's printing for the first time, for a pin, or if your default filter is an XPS printer and it's going to prompt for file save, then that thread is going to get stuck, because you should not ask for any user input when you're printing on the server. So another thing around reporting that we introduced is printing on the web clients and on the SharePoint clients. We use an ActiveX control to do that. And there has been a session around web client already. I don't know, I think more details were mentioned about this in that session. But the idea is that if you're running on Internet Explorer, you can preview and save as PDF. Use these two features to see your reports on the web client. And if you're using a non-IE browser, you can actually use save as PDF to run your reports. Okay, now Torben will explain some more new features.
Yes. In C-side, we had trace selection feature where we, page by page, we knew in the section design when we were shifting to a new page, and then we could tell the printer when the new page was coming. When we made the first design for RDLC reports, we didn't see the same feature available for the RDLC reports, because we were making a dataset first, sending it to the client, and rendering it together with an RDLC file, and then we got an output. And first by then we knew how many pages we had. So what we could do then is that we could at least make the first page and the last page and everything in between, because that covers actually pretty many scenarios where we have a sheet in the front and a zero or a check-in as the last page. But this one was based on metadata on the object, so you could put trace on there. So we also saw the need for a dynamic version of the same thing, and we here introduced a CodeJournal1 trigger where we could do dynamic selecting of paper trace. So By default, it's not inside Code Unit 1, so it's more for the specific places where you have a need to do it dynamically. And that could be scenarios where you have multi-companies and multi-locations where you need to shift it on the fly. But if you go in and make a procedure like this one inside Seaside, you would get called with the ID of your report and the ability to influence what tray is going to be used on your printer afterwards. Save as on request page. We introduced in R2 during a hotfix, we introduced the ability to do print to PDFs from the request page. But since that was in a hotfix, this is first time promoted as in a real release. And what you get here is the ability to persist your files with the values that is put into the request page. So if you tick the checkboxes, you can then, instead of doing preview or doing direct print, persist your files as PDF, Word, or Excel. All right, about the report. It was also inside 2009, but it's if you're going to make RDLC reports, it's definitely a tool you're going to use and going to need, because that's where you can see what is fed into the report viewer control. And on this one, we added a new button. It's called Export as XML, which will actually take the data set that was fed into the report viewer control and save it as an ADO.NET dataset compliant file. And that gives you the option to take the rendering process outside of NAV and put it into an offline project. An offline rendering could be interesting if you're having a developer that knows RDLC very well, but doesn't know NAV or should not know about your NAV data. So you could send him an RDLC file, and you can send him a dataset file, and he can render offline and do the design of the report, and you can take it back into NAV again. So I'll do a little demo of that one. This is also described in documentation also. So what you need to do is you need to make a little Visual Studio solution. And there's a guide to make it. It's pretty simple. It's just a form with a report viewer control on it. And then in the walkthrough, there's also the pieces and parts to feed the control, how to do it. So I don't want to spend the time on that in the presentation here, but you can find that inside the documentation in the job files. But the information for the report rendering outside of NAV, you need an RDLC file, and you will need a dataset file. So let's see how we get those out of it. First of all, we'll take report 205, for instance, order confirmation. We'll do design on it. And we'll do view layout. And wait a bit for Visual Studio. So now we have the design up. We can right click here and say open containing folder. And we can copy the RDLC file. And we go back into the offline project. We do the same here. Open the containing folder. And we override the RDLC file. Now we go into Seaside again and invoke the run part. So we get the report up here. To enable the ability to dump the XML, report dataset can be pretty large, so we don't want to cache them if it's not really important. So if you go up here on the request page and say help about this page, we now enable the report to be in the mode that it will persist the dataset so we can get access to it afterwards. It can both be done from the request page, but you can also do it from inside the report. But that will require that you rerun the report. So now we'll do a preview. And we'll go for help about this report. And we say export as XML. Oh, it's already at the folder. So we'll save here the dataset in the folder where I have my offline project. And now we go back to the offline project. And we hit Control F5 to invoke the application. So what we can see here is that the application is now changed from the outside. It's rendered outside of NAV, and you can actually also do changes to the layout in here and see that they get changed. So we now change the layout, and now when we need to get it back to the NAV again, we can take it from the folder here. And if you closed Visual Studio in between, my folder is now open because I still have Visual Studio here. You can just open it up again, and then it would say view to the open to the folder again, and then get the file back into C-side. So if we go into C-side now, we'll update the file, save and compile. Oh, I have it blocked over here. And now it says hello Mibuse over here. These offline rendering is also pretty useful if you need to have an escalation. If you have something that is could be a potential bug in the report viewer or something like that, you can dump the XML and send the RDLC file, and then they are renderable by an escalation engineer also. Back to Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. So now we saw all the new features that were introduced in 2013 in RDLC report viewer and from NAV side. So what is the impact of this on designing of reports? So now I'm going to talk a bit about what all these changes has brought, what impact these changes had on development when you develop reports on NAV. So one of the things I want to mention to begin with is, it's not really a 2013 feature, but it really helps app developers, is this auto refresh of dataset. I don't know how many of you know about this one, auto refresh of dataset in 2009 R2. Okay, looks like not many, so I will describe it. So let's say you're designing a report. You have NAV open and Visual Studio open, and you make a change in the dataset. So previously, before this feature was in place, you had to close and open Visual Studio again to see your dataset refreshed. So with this auto refresh feature in place, what has happened is now, if you change something in NAV, which will have an impact on the dataset, you don't need to close Visual Studio. You right-click on the report dataset in Visual Studio and say refresh, and it refreshes automatically. So it's like a seamless experience for developers. You don't need to close, open anything anymore. You refresh on the fly. That was a great help which we received from the platform side. Changes in, because of RDLC 2008. So in RDLC 2008, we got a new feature, which is direct reference of fields from the header. So as you all know, in 2005, we could not refer to the dataset directly from the header. So the way we had to do it is create all these hidden fields in the body, and then refer to those fields from the header, which was very difficult. So with RDLC 2008, the header is able to refer to the dataset directly, and we can get rid of many hidden fields, which is a great advantage, and that helped us in cleaning up a lot of our reports. But like I mentioned here, you won't be able to remove all the hidden fields, which is also based on some design decisions in the application that we have made, and I'll speak about that in the next slide. So direct reference of fields from the header cannot be used if we have direct headers, dynamic headers. So what does dynamic headers mean? I already explained what does dynamic header mean when you change language on the fly, but you also know it's very common that you're printing multiple sales order in the same report run. So that means even the data in the header is not static, it's changing. So how do we handle that? We actually handle that by grouping within the body. So within the body, we have a control which groups per document, and it's printing information per document. But header is not able to access this grouping information within the body, because this is in a completely different scope. Header can only see the whole data set, so it can access data from the top of the data set, from the bottom of the data set, the sum of the data set, but it doesn't know what kind of groupings you are doing within the body. So since we decided to print multiple sales orders in a batch, we cannot clean up all our hidden fields. So this is a design decision we should take as Navision developers, whether we should walk away from that in the future. So because multiple documents stay, our hidden fields stay, just to handle multiple documents. So along the same lines is set data and get data. So how many of you know about set data and get data? Have you seen set data and get data? So that's good. A lot of you know about it. So it'll make my job a bit easier. So set data, get data is actually one step ahead of hidden fields. Set data, get data is actually used for printing headers on multiple pages. So especially in our document reports, we want to print the headers on multiple pages, not only on the first page. So since we are using hidden fields to print the headers, and these hidden fields are at the top of our body region, it's not available when you go to the second page of your document. So that's why we use set data to save the header information in a global variable in the background, and then we receive it back using the get data, right? So in all the reports where we were able to get rid of all the hidden fields, we were able to get rid of set data and get data also. But if we were still using hidden fields, especially in document reports, we couldn't get rid of set data and get data. So in future, again, if we change the design, we should be able to get rid of that. But obviously, you can get rid of set picture, get picture, because most probably your company logo, which you want to print on top of the document, is static. So you can directly reference to that from the header and just pick it up from the data set. Grouping. So grouping was like hidden behind the tables before. So in RDLC 2005, if you wanted to open grouping information, you have to select the table control, go behind, select groups, and then you will be able to see groups. So sometimes I spent a lot of time to find out where actually the groups are. But now it's really simple in RDLC 2008. As soon as you select a control, there is an advanced grouping pane below, and you can see all the groups available there. And there is a small button out there on the corner I pointed with the red arrow. That's called advanced mode. So if you are not in advanced mode, you're only seeing the groups which are pertaining to the tablets that you've selected at that point in time. As soon as you select advanced mode, all the statics, and I will explain what statics are, all the statics related to the tablets will also get visible. So statics for a table control or a tablets control are information which is static. Let's say you have a table and it doesn't have any grouping. So the header and the footer of the table are statics. Where if you have a table and you have some grouping in it, so the group header and the group footer is static. So if you do not want to see all the statics and you just want to see information related to the grouping, then you hide the advanced mode or you enable the advanced mode. And all the group-related properties are directly accessible from this pane below. So your experience in designing RDLC 2008 is much simpler. So I put in one more slide around how to create page breaks, because there has been a lot of questions around it, what is the nice way to do it, and previously in Classic we had a feature called report.newPage or new page per group, and in hybrid reports we kept both of them or a mix of both of them. So how do I create a page break now? Now I do not have hybrid sections anymore. So the first thing is, if you have a table which you want to start printing from a new page, let's say you want to first print the sales lines and the VAT information should come from a new page. So go to the table, go to its properties, and you can easily add page breaks so that the table starts from a new page. But what if I want a page break per group? And let me take a very practical example in here. I'm printing multiple documents, multiple sales orders at the same time, and I want every sales order to start from a new page. So let's say the first sales order took 2.5 pages, and I want the second sales order to actually start from a fresh page. So then I can go to the group-specific information and say page break between each instance of group, and then it creates a page break. But that's not all. I mean, we have complicated it one more level. We don't only print multiple sales orders at the same time, we also print multiple copies of the sales order at the same time. So we go to the request page and select number of copies. And so then the first order has 2 copies and the second order has 2 copies. So then we need actually control on page breaks based on CL code, because now CL code is looping multiple times based on copies. And then what you need to do is create a counter in CAL, which will increment for each copy. You pass that counter as part of the data set, and you group based on that. And then you define page breaks between groups. Okay, so that was all about new features. Torben will speak a bit about upgrade of reports.
Yeah. Going from a hybrid model or maybe even a native seaside report, there will be some steps for upgrading it. But if you already took the transition into RDLC 2005 in NAV 2009, you are a good step ahead. Gaurav will explain some of the changes that you need to do later on it. But first of all, when you are having an upgrade and you have a customer installation which might have 100 customized reports or maybe only 20 or 50, but which one of them is actually used and the frequency of them, would we ever like to get them upgraded to the new version? So we actually ship 2 hotfixes for 5.0 and 6.0, so you can get a trigger in Code Unit 1 to log how often your reports has been running. So this is a little hint first to how to know what to upgrade if you don't want to upgrade everything. So what is the ones that is most important for you? So overview of upgrade. Most of it is automated, and the state you need to be in before you can do an upgrade of an object is that it must be compilable. It must be compilable in the context of 2013. So if you have it upgraded, the data part of it is 100% just upgrade, and the layout part is really close to also be that. But there's a few things that we will go deeper into later in the presentation. So what happens during the upgrade? I mentioned a bit about it in the beginning. Sections disappears, and with the section, the triggers of the section disappears as well. So text boxes, they're getting converted into columns in the new model. Data items is still data items, and section triggers is deleted. All other triggers is persisted and is running as you know them in 2009. One more thing you'll see is that relational columns you got for free earlier. That's the columns that is part of keys, data item, link views, things that you couldn't see them inside the section designer unless they were of course put into them as well. But you got them for free in the dataset, else we couldn't make the grouping correctly inside RDLC. All of these columns is now visible, so nothing will happen under the hood for you anymore. So we show all the columns we gave you for free before, so you can go in and decide if you really want them or not. Also to shrink your datasets, because we added what was enough to do a proper grouping in the RDLC parts afterwards. Labels from 2009, they changed into text constants. We couldn't change them into the parameters, because potentially they could be used in the relations, as Gaurav mentioned, where they were used in a document report printing copies. So we decided that first of all everything was text constants, and that they could be advanced case by case into the new parameters. Caption class properties on text boxes has become a new call. We made a new AL method under system called caption class translate. And caption class translate is actually an accessor into Code Unit 1, where we have the method caption class translate. So before that, it happened inside the runtime environment, and it wasn't accessible from AL code. But now you can send your expression in, and for instance, you can send the 1,1,1, and you get your department code, as far as I remember. So now that's available from everywhere in AL as well. Also, if you're coming with a native report, we still have the layout suggestion you used to know from 2009, which will give you a basis fundament. We haven't advanced the code on the Create Layout suggestion in 2013, so you get what was there before. So if you don't have any RDLC during an upgrade from 2009, you will get the default suggestion. And let's take the path, how it looks like, what you do if you do an upgrade of a report. So if you have a hybrid report, first of all, it must be compilable in 2013. What you do is you go to Select Tools, Upgrade Report. Report data upgrades to the 2013 dataset definition, and layout is upgraded to RDLC 2008. Afterwards, you have to do a compiling of the object. It will stay uncompiled afterwards. Processing-only reports, they are almost similar, but there's no layout involved in them. If you had any, in C-Side section design, you could actually have controls on a processing-only report. If you had it, they're deleted now. There will only be data items left inside the processing-only report. But the steps is pretty similar as we saw for a hybrid report. And if you come with the classic one, you can see here that the step from Select Tools, Upgrade Report, where we will do the upgrade of the dataset, but that's where the layout suggestion is kicking in as well also. And when you're done with that one, you still have the work as you would have had if you started doing RDLCs in 2009, where you have to go in and do the final modifications for your RDLC, so you can get the report as you would like it. Request pages is not taken in the upgrade loop. You still have to do form transformation on those, and you will have to do that with the tools shipped in 2009. There's no form transformation tools shipped with 2013.
Yeah. So now I will dig in a bit into the upgrade stages. So what Torben explained is once you have the report compiling in 2013, if you go and press the upgrade button, technically what is happening to the report. But one of the major preconditions to that is your old report should now first compile in NAV 2013 platform, right? So it is, if you take a report directly from a NAV 2009 database and you put it on a NAV 2013 application, the report is not going to compile because let's say it refers to some tables which have changed, let's say to new dimension tables and so on. So it won't be, and then since it doesn't compile, you won't be able to upgrade it, and since it's not upgraded, you won't be able to edit it inside 2013. So you will be stuck if you take that report and put it in NAV 2013 directly. So that mandates you to actually go through an intermediary step before you can actually start working on your report in NAV 2013. So before I go into the details of the stages, you have to remember that report upgrade is not a separate topic on its own. It's part of the entire upgrade story. So what I'm going to describe here is actually combined with the whole upgrade story. I'm just taking a part out of it, and you can see the whole upgrade story if you go to that link in MSDN. But I'm trying to describe upgrade in 3 stages, and I will try to describe these 3 stages because this is important that we get this right. You have a NAV 2009 report to begin with, and it's compiling in a NAV 2009 platform, and it has NAV 2009 application objects around it. The first step that you need to perform is move this into a NAV 2013 platform, but with NAV 2009 objects in it. The objects should not be NAV 2013 objects. And the report will also have application code pertaining to NAV 2009. What will happen now is, now your report will actually compile because it has references to the objects of NAV 2009, but now you will be able to press upgrade on it to upgrade it to 2013 platform. So you will, in stage 2, you will actually have a NAV 2009 application report, but upgraded to a NAV 2013 platform. So it will have a data set and stuff like that. So once you have that, you export all the reports, and now you put it in NAV 2013 platform and application. And as soon as you put it, it won't compile, let's say, because it refers to some missing dimension tables and stuff like that. But since it's already in 2013 platform, you can now design it there, fix your missing references, and you will be able to work with it now. So let's go through how do I move from stage 1 to stage 2 first. And once you reach stage 2, then you can run the upgrade process. No, wrong direction, sorry. Why is it? Okay. So stage 1. So what is the output of stage 1? The first step should be that you take NAV 2009 reports and you move them in a stage where they are compilable in 2013 platform. So you take your NAV 2013 database and you delete all your data ports and forms first. And then you export all the objects in text format. And these steps are actually clearly written in the help files that we have released in MSDN with all pictures and diagrams. Then you have to run this tool, which we actually ship with the DVD, called Text Format Upgrade Tool. It actually cleans up your objects based on references to old platform stuff like forms or request forms or other stuff which is not valid anymore in the NAV 2013 environment. Then you take this text objects and you put it, and you create a new database in the 2013 environment and you import all the objects in it. And then you compile all of them, and then you hit upgrade on all the reports. Then you will have all your 2009 objects, but upgraded into a new platform view. Once you have that working, then you can take your objects, like I said, put it into your 2013 application and fix all issues. If these are your own reports, obviously if it's a custom report, a question of merging comes into play. So our suggestion for merging is you will never be able to merge a section-based report with a dataset-based report. They will look completely different when you open it in a diff tool. So you should take the base report on which you created your customizations, upgrade it to 2013 platform, do the same for your customized report, do a diff among them, and merge it to the base 2013 report that we are shipping. And that is the most feasible way by which you can perform the merge, because you have to see your customizations, but with the eyes of the new platform. You cannot compare the old format with the new format. So once you've done your upgrade, one thing Torben mentioned is the upgrade is 100% on data and 99% on layout. So what is this 1%? The first thing in this 1% is actually something related to set data, get data. Our old friend set data, get data. We should really get rid of it. The thing is, one of the optimizations they have done in the new rendering is if you have a hidden field in the header, no matter what is its expression, it will not get evaluated. Because it's hidden, there is no point evaluating it. But we used to use these hidden fields in the header to actually set the data of the header in the background. So that doesn't work anymore. So you need to now go and move that set data expression from the hidden field into the visibility expression of that field. So there used to be a hidden field in the header which set the data in the background. Instead of that being in the source expression, that should be in the visibility expression. Visibility expressions are always evaluated because the renderer needs to see if it should be visible or hidden, and then your set data will work. So that has to be done manually. You can create a tool for it. We could not provide an automated upgrade because everybody doesn't call their functions as set data. There's a set info, set right header, set left header. There's a mix of all those functions around. The second thing is, there might be small differences, and we haven't seen that in all cases. There might be small differences in the way RDLC 2005 controls behaved and how Tabliq's control behaves. So after printing a report in a A4 format or a letter format, it might happen that some things are overflowing. So in that case, you might have to readjust your controls. And the third thing is actually something you don't necessarily need to do, but you have to be very careful about it. In Report Viewer 2010, there is another optimization that all the pages do not get rendered at the same time. Previously, if you remember, you opened up a Report Viewer and there was this huge clock going on while all the pages were getting rendered. That doesn't happen anymore. The first page is shown immediately while all the other pages are getting rendered. So when you switch back and forth, the pages are getting re-rendered every time. So there have been some bad design patterns which we have seen, that people used global variables behind controls to create totals. So when you switch back and forth, the pages will call this total again and again, and the global variable will keep growing in value. So all your sums will go wrong. That is a completely non-recommended pattern. If you want to create sums, there are aggregate functions in RDLC. Use sum, use running, it's called running average, right? Yes. So all these aggregate values you should use to, we have seen some errors, and I really wanted to share this with you because it's a really strange behavior that comes up, but please do not use this pattern. Once you've upgraded, some of the things you can do, and this is something we have done to our reports, is do some kind of performance cleanup and optimizations. So one of the things Torben showed you is around rename refactoring. When you automatically updated your section reports into column reports, you used to get these really, really long names with a lot of underscores. So please clean them up so that it's much easier to see in RDLC and your report looks cleaner. We also started using the page number and the user ID directly from SSRS instead of using the Navision counterparts. After we upgraded, we actually saw that there were a lot of unused columns inside the dataset, which used to increase the size of the dataset, but were never used inside RDLC. So please try to identify those. We have written internal tools to identify those and get rid of them. Your dataset should be as small as possible. Duplicate columns. So what is a duplicate column? A duplicate column is something which has the same data item as parent and the same source expression. And our reports are full of that because we used to have these classic sections and we used to use curreport.showOutput to show them conditionally. And the same name, let's say the description of the item was each of them. Now after upgrading, the first one will become description, the second one will become description underscore control1, the third one will become description under control2, and so on. But you only want one description field because now you just want your clean data set. So get rid of your duplicate controls, your data set size is going to shrink heavily. Header and get dataset data refactoring, use it wherever possible. We have cleaned up our reports with that. There's another thing which you can do is if we actually used to create a lot of dataset rows, even if they were not used for rendering, because we were using them for looping and filling up some other temp table which actually we used for rendering. But if you're doing that, you don't want to send them all the way to Visual Studio and make a huge data set. So if you are using your data, using records just for processing, skip them, use internal variables to do that looping so that you can have a clean data set. Use parameters wherever possible. We have shipped in MSDN something called UI guidelines, and this is the recommended guidelines of how to create reports and UI recommendations from our side. We did clean up some of our reports with UI guidelines. You can go and do the same so that reports look nicer out of the box, and use new RDLC 2008 controls wherever possible. The last thing I want to mention around cleanup is CreateTotals. So CreateTotals, the way it worked is you used to create CreateTotals on data item fields or on variables, and you could then put it on a group footer or a real footer, and it would total automatically for you. Now you should actually total automatically inside CAL using some coding or use aggregate functions inside RDLC. But since there is a lot of code that was remaining and trying to do CreateTotals on variables, there was C-side code to reset these variables to 0 because the sections were totaling automatically these variables in the background. So if you keep your CreateTotals, your variables are going to get reset, but you're not going to get total functionality because it's actually rendered inside RDLC. So look inside your code and see if you're using CreateTotals on global variables, get rid of them. It's only going to create trouble for you. We removed all of our cases. So what did we change on our side? We actually applied UX guidelines to 228 reports in 2013, all Group 1 reports. And we cleaned up 788 reports and we put graphs and all nice RDLC 2008 features in it. And yeah, these are some of the examples of what we have done. Okay, just. So now with all this in mind, was that too much of information? Okay, so now nothing new coming up. We wanted to actually take up a very interesting topic of how do we build a document report from scratch. We know document reports have been our most difficult reports, and we had a lot of pain in building them in Classic and then in RDLC. In 2009, we had hybrid reports where we had to maintain them in Classic. We got a complicated data set in RDLC, and then we had to build them. But now, hybrid reports are gone. We can start from scratch, right? So how we can do it? So I cannot build a whole sales invoice in 15 minutes in here, but I am going to show how do we start as an application developer building document reports. And yeah. So obviously, suggestion is build it in steps. I will actually show you how to create the basic dataset structure. And from there, first, my aim will be to make the header work, because our document report headers are complicated. Changes language, changes document numbers on the fly. And then once that is done, I will start making the body work by putting first the sales line section and then some related sections to it. And my expectation is once I've shown that, you should be able to go and add more sections and add grouping to it and create a document report. I know it's going to be a little repetition for people who are very good in RDLC in here, but I wanted to address it to show you the design experience of a document report inside Navision now in 2013. Can we switch? So, yeah. I have pre-built some examples in here, but first I'm going to show you what is my final goal in this example. So, this number of copies, everybody knows it. It's there in all document reports. Let's say I set it to 2. And I'm going to generate something like this where I have a header, and the header changes for a copy to say it's a copy. And I will have 2 sections in them. One is a repeater section, which is actually showing sales line information, which can grow. And the other one is more static related to the header. It's customer information, which is related to the sell to customer. So it's a very simple example, but let's go through it of how we can start building it from scratch. So the first thing is, I have a sales header. I'm going to build, let's say, an order confirmation. So I will first put my sales header in there. Once I've done that, I need to first take care of our standard Navision design pattern of number of copies. So I created a request page, and I put number of copies as a variable in there. So I know that I have to loop per sales header, but each sales header should again loop for the number of copies inside that. So instead of creating other stuff around it, I mean, it's really recommended don't create your whole data set at the same time, because you might realize that you don't need all of that. Don't start by creating the whole data set needed for the report. It's just a suggestion. Obviously, you're open to choose your own paths, but yeah. So inside the copy loop, I actually put some code which is there in all document reports. I'm sure all of you have seen this before. So the number of loops is the number of copies plus 1, because I have to also print the original. And this is the standard way we actually send copy text. The copy text is blank, but it's assigned only when the number is greater than 1. And then, using a new feature which platform guys have built for us, you can actually, if you're on a data item, if you are on a field picker and you double click on it, the field gets added, But interestingly, it actually gets a very nice name, which is actually the recommended name from our side. It should be field name underscore data item name. Because when you're seeing these in RDLC, you would actually like to see what this field is and where is the parent data item that it comes from. So I have selected 4 fields that I want to send. I also want to send the output number. And since I'm only interested in orders, I have filtered out only orders in here. So now I will say Alt View Layout. Okay, so first, when I start working, I need 3 basic things. So I will first set them up before I go ahead. So I first go to View, Report Data, because I need to see what data I'm getting. So report data is in here. Then I need the toolbox for the controls. I will try to put the toolbox on the right. Oh, that's not good. Okay. And I always open this additional window called Document Outline. It's a very helpful window. It was there in RDLC 2005 also. You can access it by saying View, Other Windows, Document Outline, and it's going to give you an overview of how your document looks like. So my first aim is I have to, so if you think about a document report, what does it have? It has many tables, lines, prepayment information, VAT information, and you actually want all this to repeat per document and per copy. So the first thing that I need to do is I will put in a control called a list. A list control is something which can have multiple controls inside it, and it can also have some looping. So I dragged in a list in here, and this part is actually the header, this part in here. And I have put the list to cover the whole body section now. And I have named the list as copy loop container, because this is the container over which my copy loop is going to execute. And the rectangle inside the list, I've called it as copy loop rectangle. So then, once the list is created, the first thing I do is every other control is going to go inside this list, because that's going to hold my whole document together. So I'm going to set the dataset reference for this list. So I don't have to do it then for the others. So I set it to the dataset result, which actually is the name of the dataset which NAV creates. And then I was speaking about this advanced pane before. I'm going to go to this advanced pane, group information. I'm going to group on sales header and output number. That's about it. And then the idea is to make the header work. So how to make the header work? Same story, set data, get data. No, sorry, I will come to that later. How to make the header work? So since I cannot refer to it directly because this is group-specific information, like I already mentioned, you have to first receive the information in a control within the loop, within the list, because the list is going to iterate over each group. So it holds group-specific information. So I need the group-specific document caption and the group-specific number of the document inside it. And that's why I created a hidden field. And this you've seen in all our reports in 2005 also, to take our values in. And this control, I have named it as header info. And now I want to refer to this control directly from the header. And I call it report items.headerinfo.value. So if I go and print this report now, and I put 2 copies in it, preview, you will see that the header more or less, I will just zoom in a bit more. So the header seems to work. Order, 2 copies, another order, 2 copies, and you can add more fields to it. But there is one small thing which I missed in here, is what happens if the body is going to overflow to the second field. So I will take that in the next example in here. So just to mock that situation that if my table is going to go over to a second page. So I put in a huge rectangle in here, which is big enough so that it can go to the next page to simulate a real document, which is generally more than one page. And if I put that in there, and I did nothing else, and I'm trying to print the report, go into the preview, and I will zoom in a bit. You will notice that my header has stopped to work because the hidden field which was holding my header was somewhere in here, and it's not available on the second page anymore. So let's quickly try to go and fix it, because we already know what the fix is for this. So that is the third example. So the first thing which I need to do is go to report properties, and in the code behind, I add two functions. And a lot of you already have seen these functions, get data and set data. But one small change for NAV 2013 is my set data should return true. It's very important that we do this. I will explain that why. So now, once those functions are in place, we used to create this small hidden field on the top of the header to receive information from the body and set it as a global variable so that it's available for all the other pages, right? But this cannot be hidden anymore, then it won't get evaluated. So the expression is completely blank, but if I go to the visibility expression of this particular field, I will see that I'm calling set data in here, and this is going to return true. And because it returns true, so this section is going to be hidden now. So it still works as a hidden field, but it actually helps you to set the data in the background. And now, in all the headers, I just need to call code.getData, and I have my headers working. So with this small fix in place, let's try to run my report again and preview. Okay. And you will see my header has started to work. Now this is all you need to do to make the header work. Now if you need more information in the header, just pass it from C side, grab it in the body and show it to the header. There is no more magic. All the headers of the reports are going to work like this. So I'm going to take this example up one notch and try to see how I can add some sections into the body. So I move on to my example 4, and I start by adding sales lines. Very simple, create this, select the field picker, it's going to give you good names. You already have a clean data set. And I linked the sales header, sales line to my sales header using document type and document number. Now if I go to layout, just drag in a table control. It's a simple table. I haven't implemented any grouping in here. These lines in here, as you all know, it's an iterator that's going to iterate over the data set. And this is the header and this is the footer. Now, important thing to remember is this control is inside the list already. So I don't need to worry about filtering group-specific information in this table, because this table is inside the list, and the list is only going to have that particular group-specific data set inside the scope. So the table is only going to see for each group the lines of the data set which are pertaining to that group. So that's the advantage of creating the list up front. And I've created some sums which are use of aggregates to create the totals. Now if I go and print this one, so you will see that the body has started to work. But I missed one very important step in here, and that I will realize if I start adding more controls. So adding more tables, requires two things. One is creating the data set. Now, we have been very good in creating the data set. We have written complicated code to create temp tables of VAT amount line and prepayment lines and fill them up and pass it. So CL code we are very good at. So this part should be easy. The second part is how would I put it in RDLC? So you create it as a data item, you receive it there, you put it in a table, and that's how you keep on developing a document report. But what did I miss in here? So let's see if I want to now add a customer. So I added a customer at the same level as the sales line because it's one sell to customer related to the header. And I linked it to the header using sell to customer number. And if I just go and try to see the layout now, I've added a table region in here, and I've put some fields in there and a header called customer info. If I try to print this, I will see that it seems to work, but it's creating those additional lines in there. So why are those additional lines coming? My controls are already in the list, so I should have access only to the group-specific rows. What are those external lines for? So this we can see easily using the feature Torben spoke about, about the report. So if I run this report again, I just enable the data set in there. And if I run it again, I will see that these two lines are actually pertaining to the first run. So in that particular table who's printing the lines of the customer info, he doesn't need to think about all the other rows. The document number and output number is already within the correct, he's already within the correct scope for it. But since the sales line and the customer are at the same hierarchy, they are going to undergo an outer join. And they are going to create new rows. So in the sales line, when the sales line row is getting created, there is no information related to the customer. And when the customer row is getting created, there is no information related to the sales line. So I don't need to filter too much. I just need to filter out that what my sales line should show and what my customer information should show. So my most logical conclusion from this would be, first table should filter on number sales line greater than 0, and the second table should filter on customer number greater than 0, right? So let's make that quick fix. So that's the last report in here. So I go to the table's properties, I go to filter, and I filter out number sales line greater than 0 for the first one, and similarly for the next one, I just filtered out number customer greater than 0. So now if I quickly go and print the report, the output will be like we expected. It will not have those extra lines. So now adding new sections to the report will not be that difficult from RDLC point of view. It will be difficult from C-side point of view because we have all those complex calculations in document reports around VAT and prepayment. But adding new sections in RDLC should be that simple. Put in a table, and then you can filter them out, do all your magic. You can select them and say, okay, I want to group based on customer number. So go and add a group before. That's it. Okay, so can we switch back to the presentation? Yeah, can we switch back? So that was a demo of how to build document reports. I hope you are more comfortable with RDLC document reports now. With that, we'll be trying to close the session. We have put these PPTs will be shared, and we have put a lot of links in there. And We have put a lot of walkthroughs and in MSDN, so please go through them. We explain all this stat data, and we have tried to demystify them as much as possible. Our hands-on lab will be on partner source soon, and there are some books which you can read up on RDLC, because RDLC is a completely different topic, right? With that, I think we'll close our session and start taking questions. But before I take questions, one thing my friend has told me here, the people from the test team are performing this Cal testability survey. I hope a lot of you have got the forms, but it would be nice if you fill them and give it to them, because we will try to improve the experience there. If you don't give us the feedback, then we can't really use it, right? So yeah, I think we should open it for questions.
Hi. Footers in RDLC reports. I know there's a footer section, but there's only one footer section.
I cannot hear.
Here.
Ah, sorry.
The footer sections in RDLC reports. I saw that there's only one footer section, but what if I want to have two footers? One fixed footer in the bottom for Giro, and a second footer fixed in the bottom for totals. Mm-hmm. Which is not displayed on every page, and the other footer is displayed on every page.
Can we increase the volume on this mic somehow? Okay, so as far as I understood...
Like that.
Okay. No.
Okay.
Okay, so there was something wrong. Okay, yes.
So two footers.
Okay.
On the RDLC report.
Mm-hmm.
One footer on every page, and another footer on not every page, maybe only the last page.
Okay.
And all footers in the bottom.
Okay, so headers and footers, they do not collapse on their own in RDLC 2008. So you can have multiple footers, and headers and footers have access to the global page number variable. So you could have two footers on top of each other, for example, and when your page number is 2, then you hide the first one and show the correct one. So you can do that. But if you say that I'm going to hide both the footers and my footer will collapse and take no place, that is not going to happen. They are going to take all the space that's needed, and that's an RDLC thing, right? But yes, global page numbers and visibility.
You said you created some tools to clean up the reports. Are these tools available for the partners?
Yes, the tools should be available on the DVD, and it's a cleanup tool. You brush on the TXT files, and you get forms into pages, and request form into request page, and so forth.
So the text upgrade 2013 tool that we showed in one of our... I cannot hear you anymore. The mic moved.
I'm back.
You said a tool to find the variables that are not used.
We don't release that tool, right?
No, that's an internal tool.
Unused columns, that we don't release it.
It didn't meet the bar.
But just for a suggestion, right? If the dataset name, let's say it's called name_Gaurav. If it's only present once in the whole text file, then it's not used in RDLC. It's only in the dataset. So it should be very easy for you to create such tool and clean it up. I mean, I'm giving you what the tool does actually. So the tool is not released, but it's only present once. That means it's not used in the RDLC. Otherwise, it should be present twice. Yeah.
And you said we can use HTMLs in RDLC reports, right? And also in other presentations, I heard we can use queries for better performance. Mm-hmm. So do we have any base reports? I mean, you used in any reports?
I think you can look into report 19. As far as I know, we used query there. And HTML, we haven't used in any of our reports as such. But I mean, it's open to you. I mean, you should explore it, what kind of headers. Like Torben explained, right? You could have a part of the header, let's say the customer information, which is static in all sales reports, and you create it as an HTML with just break tags inside CL code and send it across. And then you can change at one place and it reflects everywhere. You can do all that stuff yourself. So we were actually supposed to hand out some t-shirts in here to our... So, Torben. Yeah. So, I'm going to run up now there and hand over the t-shirt while I take the second question. So you can already ask the question.
Okay. Hi. I experience difficulties when embedding fonts in PDFs.
Yeah.
With the
report viewer 2010. I think I have to get back to you on that one, but I know our PM has worked hardly with the SSS team to document some examples on it. So if you come back down here afterwards, I'll give you a product manager that you can talk to.
My question is, there is still different rendering engine for preview and for print, or not?
Please say again.
I mean, we all know that. Hello. Yeah. we all know that there is a different rendering engine for preview and for printout, isn't it? In 2009.
I can't.
Is it you're asking if the rendering engine is different for preview and for print?
Yeah.
Yes, but they are delivering the same output. So if you're doing save as PDF from inside it or save as PDF from the outside, it is the same report viewer control that is rendering a same version.
Is it possible to use queries in the reports?
You can't use them as source tables. They're not done like that. But you can do an integer instead and then loop them like you would have done on a temporary table inside a report normally also. So make a query and you after get record, take the values outside of your query. So yes, it is usable, but it's not directly as a source table.
A question about upgrading. Is it possible that you stop after step 1, so that you do exactly a technical upgrade from 2009 to 2013? Is that possible?
You stop after step 1.
Yes, you've got your upgrade. You stay at your database 2009, and you use at that time your 2013.
Yeah.
No, it's not possible because we have the new NAV user system, and it requires system table upgrades. So it definitely involves that you do the manual changes to the application. But what you can do is that you can be compilable in the state, so you can compile the reports and get it up, and then you can get it into the 2013 application. So you have to have the new system tables to be able to run inside 2013.
I already used the text configuration tool, to transform the texts into NAV 2013. But all the text and code variable types were changed to OAM text and OAM code. And I had to modify that manually. Why was that?
I'm not 100% into that, but I think if you import them and export them again, it will do an in-place upgrade. So importing will change it, and exporting again will make it into a text instead of OEM text. So it is a transition feature because you're using some of the pre-versions, and you shouldn't see them in the RTM version.
But please use the tool from the RTM version. I think you are using a CTP. Yeah, so it would be nice if you use the end-to-end one.
Can we identify the...
Please hold it.
Can we identify the errors using the debugger for reports?
Is it possible to do offline, use the offline to debug RDLC?
What do you mean by debugging the RDLC?
Let's say we have some problem in RDLC or in reports. So by using the debugger, can we identify the place where we are getting that error?
Debugger is only server side. So when the RDLC is rendered together with the dataset, that happens on the client side. And it's nothing that the debugger can go into. It is a dynamic assembly that is created under the hood. So it's not something that is nice for anyone to debug unless you have the source code of the report viewer control. But you can still do the debugger on the server side parts where you iterate on the triggers and expressions and so forth.
But you should be able to use the offline solution to debug your RDLC, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to debug your RDLC, do it using the offline solution. If you want to debug the cal code, use our debugger.
Yeah, you have shown that offline report preview and all, right? From that, can we print the reports also?
Yeah.
Yes, it is the same report viewer control that we're using inside RTC. So you can do whatever you can from there also.
Okay, thank you.
It will not understand the metadata, of course. So if you have any metadata you apply to the object, you will have to apply the same to the control, of course.
Yeah. It's just about the logos or the blob files on the company information table where the companies have their logos and you've got them on the documents, the printed documents. Is there anything we need to do with them, or does it just bring them through? Or do we need to do some resizing to the logo when it's on the report?
I didn't understand the question.
Okay. The company logos get printed on the... Is that better? The company logos get printed on the reports, and we've had some problems in the past trying to resize them in the sections. When we bring them into Visio, do we need to do anything there as well to resize them, or does it automatically pick the size of the blob file?
So it's about the
so you think if it can grow or shrink inside the RDLC as it used to?
Does it use all the space it's got available, or do we have to constrict it?
I don't have the answer on top of mind. You have to see what properties you can set on the image. I don't have an answer on that one.
No.
But I mean, you should be generally using the same resolution on the image that you want to use in your controls. And the other thing is, it's good to standardize all your reports to have the same size on the logo controls, so that on one report it doesn't grow and the other report doesn't shrink. So if it's correct in one report, it should be correct in all the reports. Yeah, you can tool it again, so to standardize it. Yeah, there's a question here.
I think one final question, because we're running out of time.
This new feature, export to XML the dataset. Can it be done programmatically? Is it the same as XML does?
You can't do it directly programmatically, but you can use it inside test code units. Inside test code units, there's actually the ability also to dump the parameters. In the export XML we saw here, parameters is not part of the report viewer. But if you're in a test code unit, you can make a handler for a report, which will handle the request page. And in there you can actually get a save as XML taking two paths. And that one will deliver you the dataset and the parameter XML.
So inside base test.
So you can do it inside test code unit. You can do it.
Only test.
Yeah.
What save as XML does for the report?
It's obsolete. It was from the old one where it was. Okay. So to not hurt all the objects too much. It's,
how are we doing with time?
I think we are running out of time now.
So we will be available at the experts lab if you have more questions on reports.
Hello, sorry, last one.
Okay, let's take the last question and then...
Can I get the RDL and load it on SQL reporting service?
Say again?
Can I get the RDL and load it on SQL reporting service so it can run from there?
There's no access on it right now, but you can do some stuff because OData can deliver data for you for SSAS server. So you can actually do some tricks, take the XML outside of OData and put them into SSAS, which can consume XML sources, and you should be able to get them to there. But there's no direct solution for getting them into SSAS server.